So welcome back to Kagyu, Samye, Dzong, Edinburgh for the second season of this study course of Milarepa's songs. So before we start, let's say the introductory prayers, which will be the prayer to the Guru, the root Lama, and then to the lineage. O glorious, precious root Lama, above my head on a lotus moon seat, you care for me with great kindness. Please bestow the siddhis of body, speech, and mind. Great Vajradhara Tilonaro Marpa Mila Dharma Lord Gampopa, knower of the 3 times, omniscient Karmapa, holders of the 4 elder and 8 younger lineages, Trikanta, Klung, and the Salpa, glorious Drugpa, and so forth, masters of the profound path of Mahamudra, to the dark pole instruction lineage, the peerless protectors of wanderers. Kagyu Lamas, I supplicate you, I uphold your lineage. Grant the blessings of your liberating lives. Just as revulsion is taught to be the legs of meditation, this meditator clings not to food and riches, and has severed the ties to worldly life. Grant your blessings for detachment from honor and gain. Just as devotion is taught to be the head of meditation, this meditator constantly prays to the Lama, who opens the vault of pith instructions. Grant your blessings for uncontrived devotion to well forth. Just as non-distraction is taught to be the body of meditation, this meditator simply remains without altering the fresh essence of whatever thought arises. Grant your blessings for parting from the concept of meditation. Just as thought is taught to be in essence Dhammakaya, for this meditator unhindered manifestation dawns. Nothing whatsoever dawning as whatever may appear. Grant your blessings to realize inseparable samsara nirvana. May I never in future lives part from authentic lamas, and embracing ever the glory of Dharma. May I perfect the qualities of the levels and paths, and thus swiftly attain the state of Vajradhara. So, this new course will be a little bit different to the previous one, because the previous one, the narrative was taken from different points in Milarepa's life when he encountered different kinds of beings, quite sort of, really I chose the ones that I thought would be a good spread of the types of songs that he and the teachings that he gave to different kinds of people. But what we're going to do in this season's course is to concentrate on two main other people apart from Milarepa, and that is Rinchen and Gampopa, to whom Milarepa gave all his teachings, and they are known as like his closest, his heart sons, the people closest to him that carried on the different lineages. So because of that, there's a narrative that we'll follow through from one session to the next. In terms of their respective characters, Rinchen and Gampopa, you could say they were almost polar opposites, because Rinchen was really just a boy when he met Milarepa, and so he lived with Milarepa and for most of the time, apart from when he was away meditating or traveling in different places. But generally speaking, he spent most of his life with Milarepa, whereas Gampopa was already mature when he met Milarepa. He'd been married, he'd had a child, he was a physician, he was also a monk. So he'd done a lot of the hard work in terms of Dharma and living generally, his experience. He was already very experienced, but he needed to perfect himself, and that was done through Milarepa. So they're two very different kinds of stories, and anyway, you'll see, it all will be revealed in good time. But of course, because of the fact that, for example, Rinchen was with Milarepa for so long, there's many songs that kind of show his development and the relationship between the student and the master. And if we were to go through all of them, then that would take a long time. So this is really to give you a taste to maybe get this book yourself and to read through all of them. I'm just taking cherry picking really a few. I'm very apt, and all the songs are wonderful, but we can't do them all in this course. So I think I've picked a few that also kind of show the narrative of their relationship. So they're at different periods in the time that they spent together. So before we start with that, I'd like to begin with the Dakini's prophecy. Now, there was a prophecy by a Dakini that prophesied to Milarepa what was going to happen. And so I'm going to read that from this book, because obviously it's incredibly important. So early one morning, we're talking about Milarepa being in his cave, meditating, and then early one morning, within the state of luminosity that he had achieved, Vajrayogini appeared. Now, Vajrayogini is the main meditational deity, the yidam of the Kagyu, what is now the Kagyu lineage. But of course, when Milarepa was practicing, there wasn't anything called the Kagyu lineage. It was the beginnings of it, and he was the beginning of it, but it wasn't called that. Anyway, so he had this vision of Vajrayogini. And she appeared to the Jetsun. The Jetsun is an honorific title for Milarepa. And she said, "You will have one sun-like disciple and one moon-like disciple, and 23 disciples who are like the stars. There will be 25 siddhas amongst your students. There will be 100 disciples who attain irreversible realization, 108 great beings who attain heat on the path, and 1001 male and female yogis who take hold of the path. Having made a connection with the Dharma, those who will cut the rebirth to lower realms, who study with you, will be countless. Your moonlight disciple, one with karmic potential, is at the Pura Pass at Guntang. Therefore, you should go there. Hearing this prophecy, Milarepa then resolved to go there. I think we'll just unpick that a little bit. So she said, Vajrayogini said to Milarepa, you will have one sunlight disciple, one moonlight disciple. So they're both extremely important, you know. Often when you see the tankas, the paintings of great beings, there will be the central figure, and there will be a little moon usually in the left-hand corner, and a sun in the right-hand corner. And they depict the lineage or other great beings that are to follow. So that's why they're kind of the sun and moon are the great disciples that will follow that teacher, in this case Milarepa. But not only that, you will have 23 disciples who are like stars. They will also be incredibly high realization level. They'll be like stars. And then, as well as that, there will be 25 siddhas amongst your students. Now, siddhas are masters of realization. You could say they're very high level as well, and have powers that they, what we would see as being supernatural powers. Then there will be 100 disciples who attain irreversible realization. So that means they've reached such a level of realization that in the lives to come, there's no going back. They can't unrealize themselves. They're going to go forward from that point. So they're also very highly realized. Then there will be 108 great beings who attain heat on the path. Now by heat, they're talking about inner heat, or tumo in Tibetan. And that's a practice that Milarepa was particularly amazing at, and which is why he could exist in mountains in the freezing cold and in the snow and be warmed by this inner heat. So it's a very profound practice. So it says that there will be 108 beings who attain this level of practice, and then 1,001 male and female yogis who take hold of the path, so the ones that really go for it. And I'm very glad that there's female ones included in that, because, in those days that was rare. It probably still is quite rare, but not as much as it was in those days. Simply because women usually got landed with all the childbirth and the household things and all of this. But anyway, Vajrayogini particularly points out male and female yogis. So these are the yogis who follow the similar path to Milarepa. So not monks and nuns, but more sort of wandering yogis, as opposed to being in an institution like a monastery or a nunnery. And then, having made a connection with the Dharma, those beings who study with you, and they will cut the rebirths of lower realms, they will be countless. So they've studied with Milarepa, or they've been influenced by Milarepa to such a point it's changed their lives, and they will no longer be able in future lives to be born in the lower realms. They'll have gone beyond that. So it's gradually in descending order, but those beings are countless. You can't even count those ones who will be influenced by them and who continue to be influenced by them. Because we are influenced by him, aren't we? All these hundreds of years later. And how influenced we are, we can maybe add ourselves to the list. It depends. So that's up to us. She could only talk about what was happening right at that time. Maybe not. Maybe she's looking into the future. It is, after all, Vajrayogini we're talking about here. So that's the prophecy. And so she ends up by saying, your moonlight disciple, one with great karmic potential, is at the Pura Pass of Guntang, this particular area. Therefore, you should go there. And he resolves immediately a cocoon, a silk cocoon, I don't know, that's just my invention. Anyway, it's the silk cave, and it's at the upper part of Goat Pass. So, there at this Goat Pass was a handsome and very intelligent boy who had lost his father at an early age. And after his father's death, his uncle and mother jointly supported him. So his mother must have, and his uncle, I presume it was his father's brother, they supported him. And the boy, from a very young age, was able to read really well, and because of that, he received many gifts from people who listened when he recited the scriptures. So they were obviously a religious or spiritual family, and he would recite scriptures. And many people couldn't read, at all, let alone recite the scriptures. So then they would give him gifts. They would sponsor him or give him offerings. So one day, as this boy was riding a donkey while tending a herd of cattle in the upper part of this valley, his own valley, he came to a cave where the Jetsun Milarepa was practicing. And he could hear Milarepa singing this song of realization. And as he heard him, his whole demeanor changed, his outlook changed, his mind changed, just listening to it. He hadn't even seen Milarepa, but he could hear him, and he heard what he was singing. And it had a deep, profound effect on him. So he got off his donkey, and leaving behind the cows, he totally forgot about the cows, he approached the Jetsun. And as soon as the boy saw Milarepa's face, an indescribable samadhi arose in his mind. Samadhi is like a state of grace, you could say. It's really like an epiphany or something like that. And it arose in his mind stream, and he just stood there for a while, straight and still. This boy was Rinchen Khandro, one of the heart sons of Milarepa. So this was Rinchen. Of course, at that time he wasn't even called Rinchen, because that's the name that Milarepa gave him. And Rinchen actually means like small. Rinchen means the cotton-clad ones, but the chung bit means small, as in the junior one. So not the Milarepa, but the junior Repa, Rinchen. And his full name, Rinchen Khandro. And so he became one of the heart sons of Milarepa. So by the power of his awakened karma, he gained unwavering faith in the Jetsun. He offered to the Jetsun all the gifts that had been given to him from reciting scriptures, and he's offered them all to Milarepa and stayed with Milarepa to study Dharma. So there was no doubt in his mind. He knew, because obviously this is a past life thing. That's what it means when it says awakened karma, this karma that was just waiting to be awakened. And so when it was awakened, boom, he didn't have to I wonder if it's the right person or none of that stuff. It was the right one. So he made no delay about it. He just gave all of his offerings and the money and whatever gifts he'd been given by his sponsors, you could say. Everything went to Milarepa, and with the request that he would ask him to study with him. So his mother and uncle looked into the situation and saw that the boy was staying with Milarepa, but no longer receiving any more gifts for his recitations. And they thought, well, this is strange. What's happened? Have the benefactors stopped giving him any money? So they went round to each of the patrons who had been giving offerings, money for the scripture recitations, and said, have you been giving my son his wages? And they all said they had. So they had given, they had offered. Then, realizing that the money that had been offered to the Jetsun, the boy's mother and uncle did all they could to stop the boy. They weren't happy with this state of affairs at all because they couldn't get their hands on any of the money. But to no avail. The boy was not having any of it. He'd given the money. He wasn't going to be asking for it back. So they became, the mother and the uncle became very angry and spiteful. The boy, however, received instructions from Jetsun Milarepa, and he began to meditate, and excellent experience and realization arose in him. Due to the heat of his Chandali practice, or Tumo in Tibetan, Chandali in Sanskrit, I think, he was even able to wear a single cotton cloth, and thus he received the name Rinchen, Little Repa or Junior Repa. So at this time, Rinpoche's mother and uncle forcibly took him back. They went to get him, they took him back, and they put him to work ploughing the fields. And he wasn't really suited to this at all, and in fact he got very ill. He was stricken by an illness which is said to have been caused by the Earth Lord spirits. What that usually means is something like the nature spirits. Maybe in that field they disturbed the nature spirits, and then they kind of took, sometimes they would cause beings to be ill or things like that. So that was the explanation given. Then he was on retreat some of the time, and when he was on retreat in the hopes of curing himself of the illness, he wasn't doing very well at this. He was still really ill. But there were 5 Indian acharyas who came. They were kind of Indian yogis who were traveling in Tibet. And they came begging to him for food because they were yogis as well. Rinchen did offer them some puffed barley that had been given to him by his mother and uncle. He had some food with him, so he gave that to them. And while they were all eating, they all cried out, Chitijvala, which is Pali or Hindi, I'm not sure which Indian language it is, but it means, oh my goodness, something like that. It's an exclamation. As they realized, they looked at Rinchen and realized that he had a really bad disease, something like leprosy, maybe even what is not certain it was leprosy, but something visibly damaging as well as interior. So Rinchen said, yes, I've been ill, and do you yogis, Indian yogis, maybe you have some methods to heal this illness? And the leader of the group said, oh, you poor thing, you really are in a pitiful state. I can't do anything myself, but I have a guru called Chandra, and I can take you to see him. So this is a very kind yogi because he put up his own travels and what he was about to do in Tibet, and he committed to going to India with Rinchen. So Rinchen went to Milarepa to get permission to go to India, to which Milarepa consented, and he sang this song of realization on the Dharma of travel. So let's have a look at this song. I supplicate the Lord with supreme kindness. Bless my son, Rinchen here. Son, for this life's ultimate aim, focus on Dharma. Not merely with words, you should supplicate the Guru, Yidam, and the 3 precious jewels. Now go and travel in the land of India. For food, eat the food of endurance in samadhi. As a connection with the Atung, wear the cotton cloth. Then ride the illusory horse of prana and mind. Now go and travel in the land of India. Scrub the mind that is free of stain. For that, always observe, free of regret, the white silver mirror of Samye. Now go and travel to the land of India. Should the bandits of desire for fame outwardly overtake you, keep watch by equalizing the 8 worldly concerns. Hide your good qualities within the unobservable state. Rousing excellent bodhicitta, go and travel. Son, I pray your life be long and free of illness. So, let's just look at that in a bit more detail. So the first 2 lines are, I supplicate the Lord with supreme kindness. So who is that Lord that he's talking to? Is Marpa. It's his own teacher, the one he holds high above everybody and everything. Marpa, through whom he gained his realization, Marpa is the Buddha for him. You know, Marpa is his teacher, the utmost Lord. So he's supplicating Marpa, the Lord of supreme kindness. Kindness is the main quality of the Buddha, of the Bodhisattva. You know, the kindness is overwhelming. So through his kindness, Milarepa overcame all his negative karma and got to be who he was at that point, a fully realized being. He owes everything to Marpa, so he supplicates him, always at the beginning of any song, whether Marpa's mentioned by name or not, that's who he's talking about. And he's asking Marpa, please bless my son Rechungpa here. I mean, Rechungpa would be fine with Milarepa's blessing, but that's not enough for Milarepa. Milarepa's calling on the big guns here, so not really the right word, but you know, for him the utmost power. And then he addresses Rinchen, son, for this life's ultimate aim, focus on Dharma. So whatever other aims you have in your life, it's not saying you shouldn't have other aims, maybe more mundane aims or whatever, but the ultimate aim, you must focus on the Dharma, you should focus on the Dharma, because without that, the rest means nothing. The truth of how things are. If you haven't got that, then you're still wandering in darkness. And not merely with words, you should supplicate the Guru, the Yidam, and the 3 precious jewels. So you know when we say to Buddha Dhamma Sangha, you know, you just rattle it off like this and not really thinking, not really putting the meaning into it, not focusing on what you're saying. Don't be like that. You should really just go. The words are just the token of the experience. You know, that's not the meaning of the experience. Go beyond the words to the meaning and feel the meaning of those words. To the Guru, feel the Guru, the Yidam, the meditational deity, the 3 precious jewels, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. So when you have that correct feeling and experience in your heart and mind, then now go and travel in the land of India with that in your armory, as it were. Then he goes on, for food, eat the food of endurance in samadhi. Now, he's not saying you shouldn't eat any ordinary food, but the most important food is the food of endurance in samadhi. So samadhi is the state of meditation, the meditational state, which is nourishing you in a way that ordinary food does not, because it nourishes your mind and your body. That's how Milarepa and others like him, if anyone was like him, but could meditate in caves for days, months, years even, without any sustenance, or with a very tiny bit of sustenance, because they had the food of samadhi, which nourished them on the very deep level, on every level. And of course, for that, you need endurance. You need to be able to really meditate and sit in that samadhi and go to those deep levels, not like us when we just sit for half an hour, and we just sort of rest a bit. We're talking deep, deep level of realization. Then that requires great endurance and diligence, application, and then you get the reward. You get that inner nourishment, that realization. So eat the food of endurance in samadhi, excuse me, as a connection with the atung, wear the cotton cloth. So when you go traveling, don't put other robes on. Wear that cotton cloth that you wear. The atung is another way of saying the tumo. The atung is actually a syllable, which when you're doing that practice, you visualize that syllable. It's a short ah. So as a connection with that, you never forget that, you wear that cotton cloth. Because when you're traveling, all sorts of things happen, don't they? You could easily get distracted and go down the wrong road. There's many amazing things to see and hear and do and all of that. So wear that cotton cloth, that way you'll always be connected with the atung, with the syllable, with that practice, is what it's saying. So you still do that practice wherever you go. Then ride the illusory horse of prana and mind. So he's not talking about an animal, a real horse. He's talking about the illusory horse of prana, which is breath, and mind. So breath and mind are very connected, and when you're meditating, those two are in sync, and that helps you to realize these states. There's different kinds of breaths that are used, especially on that level of tumo, you know. So there's different ways of breathing that help you to achieve that. So we're remembering all that and then riding that horse of breathing and mind, breath and mind. Now go and travel to the land of India. So that's what you should be taking with you. Never mind what we think of our clothes and our soap bag and our, all the sort of, or maybe some food that we can't get, or they might not have it in India. I'll take some, all the mundane things we think. This is what you should be taking, the important stuff. It doesn't weigh anything. You can go through customs with it and nobody knows you've got it. Then he carries on, scrub the mind that is free of stain. Now that sounds like a bit of a strange thing to say, because if something is free of stain, why would you want to scrub it? But we're not talking about a physical thing here, we're talking about the mind. And the mind is free of stain in its pure state, in its natural state. But, as we know from our own minds, we're easily influenced. We can become jealous, we can become proud, we can become hateful, we can become all sorts of horrible things when our minds are not clear. So that's what it means, like, you need to keep watch on this. You need to keep your mind scrubbed. Make sure nothing lands on it, that feeling. Okay, you might be feeling all clear now, but when you go out there, you can be tempted into this and that, and then it's all disappears and your mind becomes clouded and you can no longer see clearly. So basically, you need to keep watch on your mind, and not only watch it, but keep it clean, keep it scrubbed. For that, always observe, free of regret, the white silver mirror of Samye. So, Samye is like the commitment to your guru, the commitment to the Dharma. If you have that, that's will guard the purity of your mind. And it uses the image of a white silver mirror, which sometimes you hear of, the dust of desire or hatred or things settling on the mirror. So keep that mirror absolutely purely clean. It's just a symbol of the mind for something that you cannot really describe, but that's the way he says it. And the Samye, the commitment, remember your commitment. Your vows, basically, as well. Now go and travel to the land of India. Should the bandits of desire for fame outwardly overtake you, keep watch by equalizing the 8 worldly concerns. The thing is, because Rinchen was already had good realization, it's possible he could become famous, when people hear him or whatever. And also it was said he was a handsome lad, okay, he had some disease, but if that was to go, then maybe he would resume his good looks, and then he attracts very many people and that kind of thing. So he's telling him to be very careful about this fame thing, keep watch. He calls it like the bandits of desire waiting to come and grab you. And he tells him to keep watch by equalizing the 8 worldly concerns, the way as ordinary beings we concern ourselves with these ordinary things. So what are they? They are gain and loss. We always want to gain more of something. We don't want to lose it, We've never got enough money and we don't want to lose it. We've not got enough of the nice clothes or whatever it may be. So we want gain and we don't want loss. So we're running towards gain and we're running away from loss. That takes lots of our energy and time and headspace. So that's one of the worldly concerns, or 2 if the antonyms of each other. And then another 2 are status. You want a nice high status. On the opposite, disgrace. We definitely don't want to be disgraced or called out about anything. So again, we spend a lot of time trying to big ourselves up and sort of bury the things that might cause our disgrace. A lot of headspace taken up with all that stuff. And then praise and blame. So we like praise. We like it when somebody says, oh, you're doing really a good job, that's so good. We don't like it so much when they say, you idiot, what have you done that for? How can you do such a stupid thing? So, of course, we prefer the praise and we don't like the blame. And then, of course, the sort of very basic one, pleasure and pain. We want pleasure, we don't want pain. So all of these 8 things, which are the opposite of each other, we occupy our lives with so much. And so there's no time for practice because we're so busy chasing one, running away from the other, thinking about all these worldly concerns. So what's he saying here? He's saying, keep watch by equalizing the 8 worldly concerns. So you're not like on a seesaw of, oh, I want blame, I want praise, but I don't want, and just, constantly being up and down and up and down. Equalize it. Praise and blame, you don't care. Either one. You can cope. You can deal with it. You're not concerned. These are the concerns. So you're unconcerned. There are practices that yogis sometimes do where you go out into the marketplace and you act like a crazy person to attract blame and criticism so you can deal with it. It's a very high practice because that takes some guts to do that. But it's seeing through these things for what they are. They don't actually mean anything. They're not important. They're just worldly concerns. The more you occupy yourself with it, the more up and down you'll go. I think now, if you look at people who are driven to suicide by something that they've read about themselves on the internet, they've not even directly had it, but it's out there. And then that kind of thing, I mean, it's crazy. So you just don't concern yourself with it. I know it's easier said than done, but don't concern yourself with it. Equalize it. Praise, blame. If it's blame, okay, come on then, let's see if I can welcome it. You know, okay, maybe there's something in it. Maybe I could do with sort of, maybe I have done something wrong. And even if you haven't, just deal with it. It's not a big deal. It doesn't matter. Because it isn't how things are. It's all illusory. So, he's saying keep watch by equalizing. Equalizing really, it kind of means like making everything just the same. Whether this happens or that happens, doesn't matter. Hide your good qualities within the unobservable state. So usually what do we do when we have good qualities? I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm really nice looking, or I'm really intelligent. Oh, did I tell you about the qualification I had? Blah de blah. We big ourselves up. We're encouraged to do that. So no, that's the opposite of what we should be doing. If we do have good qualities, keep them to yourself. You don't have to be showing them all out to everybody. Because that way, that's where the trouble starts. And then the higher up you're lifted, the further you fall. These good qualities are doing you good because they're hidden. Once you start showing off, they're not so good anymore. They become tainted with pride. And then people get jealous, and then all sorts of problems occur. I do remember when in Samye when we were building, well, I wasn't building the stupa, but I was present when it was being built and I did little bits. But before it got filled with all these treasures, the treasures were in like relics and very precious things were in Akram Rinpoche's room. And so they were going to be put inside the stupa and then sealed in the top of the stupa. And I remember somebody saying to me, it's a shame that we won't be able to see them then, like if they could be on display, people might find that more inspiring. And he said, but they would lose their power. And he said, well, why would they? And he pointed to his, if you open me up, you could see my heart and lungs and everything, but I'd be dead, basically. I'd lose all my power. So you keep them. And I always think of that. So you don't have to show everything. In fact, it's better if you don't. So hide your good qualities within the unobservable state. Rousing excellent bodhicitta, go and travel. So what you need to do is have the best motivation. And what is the best motivation? It's not just about curing yourself of illness, but why do you want to do that? Why do you want to become strong and powerful and healthy? So that you can help other beings. That's the bodhicitta. That's what you need to remember. It's not all about you, So it's fine to want to become healthy, of course, but remember the reason why. It's not just for your own sake, it's for the sake of all sentient beings. Now go and travel to India, bearing all that in mind. So, with the Jetsun remaining within his retreat cave, he went back into his cave after he'd delivered all this advice in the form of this song, and he asked Rinchen to seal him in with mud. So this was what they did if he was going to be in meditation. He didn't want to be disturbed. he wasn't going to be giving teachings to people. He wanted to just concentrate on his own practice. So Rinchen sealed the mouth of the cave with mud. So it didn't look like a cave anymore. It just was a bit of mud on a wall, if you like, a natural wall. And following the yogi, the Indian acharya, Rinchen went to India, where he did indeed meet the Guru Vajrachandra. So the Guru Vajrachandra gave Rinchen the complete instructions on the winged Garuda of fierce Vajrapani. That was the name of the practice that he gave him instructions on and which Rinchen practiced. And through that, he was cured of this illness. Rinchen then returned to Tibet. It's quite sketchy on the details. It doesn't say how long he was there because it's not particularly important in terms of the songs of Milarepa. So that happened, he did that, he recovered from the illness, back to his former glowing youth, and he returned to Tibet. So he got to Tibet, and then from the town of Chidrong onwards, he went along asking about his guru's whereabouts. So he got roughly in the area where he'd left Milarepa, but wasn't sure where exactly Milarepa would be. And so he was asking different people if they'd seen him or heard of him. And he heard from somebody who said that they had heard of a yogi there named Mila, but had not heard anything about him recently. So then Rinchen got worried. He was thinking, oh my goodness, maybe something bad has happened. Has he died even? I mean, we don't know how long he was away, but maybe it was, months, years, we're not sure. And he thought, with a heavy heart, he went back to the silk cave to see if he was there. So he came to the silk cave, and the mud seal that he'd put on the cave was still undisturbed. It was exactly as he'd left it. Then he thought, well, perhaps he's died, and his dead body is what I'll find in the cave. So he tore down the mud seal and he went inside, and there the Jetsun was sitting perfectly straight, practicing. Seeing this, Rinchen was overjoyed, and he just let out an exclamation of joy and happiness, and of course Milarepa opened his, well, maybe they were already open, I don't know, but he came out of his samadhi, and Rinchen asked after Milarepa's health, and in response the Jetsun sang this song of realization. I bow at the feet of Marpa, so kind. Having cut ties with my family, I feel good. Relinquishing, clinging to my homeland, I feel good. With no care over local matters, I feel good. Not corrupted by Sangha donations, I feel good. Not becoming a householder, I feel good. Not needing this or that, I feel good. Wealthy with the noble riches, I feel good. Without the suffering of keeping provisions, I feel good. With no worry of them getting lost, I feel good. With no fear of them running out, I feel good. With resolve about mind, I feel good. Not needing to please benefactors, I feel good. With no weariness or irritation, I feel good. Without hypocritical conduct, I feel good. Whatever I do is Dharma, and that feels good. No weariness of wishing to roam around feels good. Without fear of being killed, I feel good. Without fear of burglary, I feel good. Having conducive conditions for virtuous activity feels good. Now the song actually does continue, that we're about halfway through it, but I think it would be probably easier to study it in two parts, because they're a little bit, there's a slight change of, I think most of what he's talking about in the first part is sort of more exterior, outward things, and then it turns more inward. So I think this is probably a good place to sort of have it in the first part and the second part. So let's look at it in more detail. So again, as always, he bows at the feet of Marpa. He supplicates Marpa. He acknowledges and recognizes and pays homage to Marpa. At the feet of Marpa, so kind. You know, we say that word very lightly. Somebody makes you a cup of tea, it's kind, isn't it? So, but we're talking kindness at the deepest, most profound level. And he never forgets that kindness of Marpa. So he bows at the feet of his master Marpa, so kind. Having cut ties with my family, I feel good. Now, he's not saying he's cut his family, he's cut the ties, he's cut the attachment. The you're my, this, the possession, that aspect of family. You know, he's not cut the love of his family, he's cut the attachment. Why? Because he has love for all beings, he's concerned with all beings. That's what bodhicitta is, not just I, me, mine, this one, that one. That's not impartial anymore then, is it? That's you like this one but you don't like that one, or you do your best for this one but not for that one. So he's beyond that. So he's cut that attachment, that tie. Relinquishing clinging to my homeland, I feel good. Again, it's not that he doesn't love his homeland or feel affection for it, but it's the clinging he's letting go of. That possessive aspect, which gets us into so much trouble. My girlfriend, my boyfriend, my possessions, that's where the problem is, the clinging. So he still loves his homeland, he still feels affection, but he relinquishes clinging. And because of that, because he's not caught up in that clinging, he feels good. He doesn't have that possessiveness, which is not a good feeling, is it? It's not then there's jealousy and pride and all of those things come in when you have that's my one and it's the best one and all of that, you know. So, and with no care over local matters, I feel good. So because he's relinquished that clinging to his homeland or wherever he considers his home, he doesn't have that concern over local matters and the council did this and the one did that and the mayor did the other thing and then so-and-so did that. All of that's gone. And so he feels good, he's free of all that. He doesn't get drawn into the nitty-gritty of mundane life. He's gone beyond. So he's free. When you're free, you feel good. Not corrupted by Sangha donations, I feel good. I'm not sure whether he's talking about Sangha as monastics or in a broader sense. It wouldn't surprise me if it was monastic, but it could also be, you know, yogis who accept offerings. I'm sure there are many that did. Well, even Rinchen did, didn't he? So this is a common thing. It's not only monastic. So the broader Sangha can be corrupted by that. They're not necessarily corrupted by that, but it's a possibility. So he's not corrupted by any kind of donations. He feels good. Not becoming a householder, I feel good. Again, when you're a householder, then you have the family, you have a house, you have possessions, you have all these things that kind of tie you down to a particular lifestyle. And Milarepa doesn't have any of that. And some people would think, well, that must be really lonely, or it might be really hard. And yes, it probably is hard, but he doesn't feel lonely because he has something so precious beyond worldly concerns. So he's not a householder, he doesn't miss it, he feels good. Not needing this or that, I feel good. You know, we have so many needs, don't we? Especially nowadays, we have more and more needs. Our whole society is based on not just needs, but wants. And, you know, making you want more and more and more of different things. That's what capitalism is, isn't it? Wanting this, wanting that. You know, or it might be on quite a gentle level. You know I'm very picky about my coffee. You know, I don't just want my coffee like this, but I want it like that. You know, we should own it if we're like that, and I do own it. I'm trying not to be so picky, but he's gone beyond all of that. You know, not needing this or that, I feel good. Wealthy with the noble riches, I feel good. He feels rich. He's got nothing outwardly. He's got a bit of a raggy old cotton robe. He eats a few bits of nettles, and he feels good. I mean, that's something, isn't it? To feel good with nothing. Because he has the noble riches, these riches inside that nobody can see. Well, maybe they manifest when he's teaching and, you know, showing just the way his wisdom is, his wisdom and his compassion, his courage, all these qualities, these amazing qualities that he has, those are the noble riches, beyond any kind of tawdry sort of money thing, you know? Without the suffering of keeping provisions, I feel good. Now, most of us, you remember when the lockdown, COVID, everyone was buying toilet rolls or whatever was going out. Yesterday, my daughters were having problems finding tomatoes because there's a shortage. I said, well, eat potato, eat something else if you can't find tomato. And then I was a bit mean, I sent her a WhatsApp message with pictures of tomatoes on. I digress somewhat, but it just happened. But we're not used to having shortages, are we? We're not used to it. We're not, you know, maybe our parents' generation were brought up during wartime, and I do actually remember my mother having a ration book. It was after the war, but they still had ration books, so they weren't expecting to have everything all the time like we are now. And we go, bananas if there's no bananas, or no tomatoes, or whatever it is. You know, it's like we're so used to having, I want that and I want it now. That's how we become so spoiled. And then when we've not got it, we feel badly done to. Hard done by. And he's saying the opposite. He's saying, without the suffering of keeping provisions, he sees keeping provisions as suffering. This is what we would, we want more. We want a nice stocked up fridge and nice stocked up cupboards, maybe in the larder as well, perhaps down in the shed in the garden as well, just in case. You know, we have all of these things, and that for him is suffering. Why? Because first of all, you've got to amass it, which takes energy, effort. Then you've got to keep it in case anyone else gets it. You know, there's all of this possessiveness attached to it. So he's completely free of that. He doesn't have the suffering of having to go and get all this stuff. And he feels good. And then, with no worry of them getting lost, I feel good. I don't have to worry about someone taking them or they go rotten or anything like that, because I haven't got them in the first place. You can't lose what you haven't got. And with no fear of them running out, I feel good. You can't run out of what you've not got. I mean, that must be very freeing when you think about it, you know. I have been in some situations, not recently, but when I lived in Bali and I had no money and I had just run out of everything. And there is a certain freedom about that, you know. And something always happens that somehow, you know, you trust in the universe and something happens. And I mean, Milarepa, you know, if he would be happy with just a few nettles, you know. Or even if he didn't have nettles. He wasn't depending on any of this stuff. So there's no fear of them running out. So with resolve about mind, I feel good. I have confidence. I understand mind. I have resolve in mind. I know what's going on. I know how it really is. That's why I feel good. All this other stuff is not important. Not needing to please benefactors, I feel good. He doesn't take stuff from people. I mean, if he will occasionally go out and beg for alms, or if somebody gives him food, he will take that, but he doesn't have benefactors on which his livelihood depends. He's not depending like that on anybody. So then, with no weariness or irritation, I feel good. I don't get weary. And I don't get irritated, you know, because there's nothing to weary me or irritate me. And without hypocritical conduct, I feel good. Imagine if you have benefactors, then you might have to please them, you know, you have to, oh, you're so good, oh, this is so kind of you, and, you know, you really are the best, you know, and be very hypocritical and all that horrible kind of feeling. So he doesn't do any of that. He doesn't have to do any of that. Whatever I do is Dharma, and that feels good. Whatever I do is coming from that place of truth, of how things really are. So then I live in that truth, and that feels good, really good, because nobody can take that away. That can never run out. That's the treasure, beyond anything worldly. And he's reached that. So everything else in comparison is, you know, that's what the French would say, it's just not even worthy of my attention, really, except to just let you know how it is. No weariness of wishing to roam around feels good. I mean, you know, we have to remember Milarepa did wander from place to place, and he would go to a certain cave and be there, or he would give a teaching, and that kind of thing he would do. But he's not roaming around because he feels, I feel like I should go and have a bit of a holiday, or I think I should go and see what it's like over. That's not his motivation for roaming around. So he doesn't have that, I've got to do this and I should do that. That's not on his agenda. So he doesn't have that weariness of having to move around just to satisfy some urge. And then, without fear of burglary, I feel good. Well, obviously nobody's going to burgle him because he hasn't got anything to burgle. So there's no fear of burglary. He doesn't have to think about anybody robbing him. What he has is, you cannot rob. Having conducive conditions for virtuous activity feels good. Nobody can take that because that's simplicity. The conducive conditions. I mean, you can't take it. Maybe there are some nettles there, but nobody's going to be interested in those. Maybe there's some water, nobody can take that. Beyond that, he lives in absolute simplicity. He has nothing. And so, he feels good because he has simplified his life to the degree where there's no extraneous concerns, it's as it is. And that feels good. So let's move on to the second part of it. I mean, it's me that's created a part, I should make that very clear. It's not really, it's all part of the same song. So we'll carry on with it now. Abandoning negative actions, I feel good. With my efforts in merit, I feel good. With no anger or malevolence, I feel good. Having abandoned pride and jealousy, I feel good. Seeing the faults of the 8 concerns, the 8 worldly concerns, I feel good. Resting in equality, I feel good. With mind looking at mind, I feel good. With no hope or fear, I feel good. In the expanse of luminosity, free of fixation, I feel good. In the space of non-conceptual wisdom, I feel good. In the primordial state of spontaneity, I feel good. With the 6 consciousnesses in their own place, I feel good. With the clarity of the 5 gates consciousnesses, I feel good. With the cutting of minds coming and going, I feel good. I have so many ways of feeling good. This is a yogi's happy song. I do not aspire for any other happiness. In death I feel good, for I've done no negative deeds. In life I feel good, for virtuous activity flourishes. Benefactors give me food and clothes. This is the kindness of the 3 jewels and the guru. To practice for the sake of yogic bliss feels good. Rinchen, are you well? And did you get what you went for? Okay. So, let's go back to the beginning of that second part. So here he's really concerned with his own behavior, less to do with, not as much to do with the outer conditions and things like that, but with his own behavior and mind. So, abandoning negative actions, I feel good. He doesn't do anything negative anymore. He did a lot of that in his youth, and he doesn't do anything negative anymore. Nothing. I mean, that's difficult to say that, isn't it? Because out of it's usually we do things that are negative out of ignorance. We don't know really what we're doing half the time, so chances are some of the time it's going to be negative. Or because we've got attachment, or because we're prideful, or because we're jealous. All these things that he no longer is, any of those things. He's got the slate clean, so then he doesn't do anything negative. So there's no negative karma. He's been there, done that, really got the t-shirt for it, because he was super negative in his youth, as we know. And now it's the complete opposite. He does nothing negative anymore because he's pure. There's nothing negative about him anymore. He's gone beyond that. And he feels good. With not only does he not do anything negative, but with my efforts in merit, I feel good. So not just content to not do what's negative, but in doing what is positive, in acting in whatever way is positive. Hence we have these teachings. If it was just a matter of not doing negative, but then not exerting yourself to do anything positive, he wouldn't have bothered to teach anybody. He wouldn't have bothered. He'd just be in his own little nice bubble. But he exerts himself greatly for all his students and for all sentient beings. And that's his efforts in merit, and he feels good about that. With no anger or malevolence, I feel good. He doesn't feel these things like anger or ill will. Having abandoned pride and jealousy, I feel good. He's free of those things, those negative, can't you call them qualities, can you? Well, negative qualities. He feels good. Seeing the faults of the 8 concerns, by that he means the 8 worldly concerns that we spoke about earlier on, the gain and loss and all of those things. He sees through them. He sees them for what they are. He sees that they're illusory, that they're not worth spending any time or energy on. He's understood that they're illusory. And because of that, he can rest in equality, in equanimity. He's perfectly in equanimity, which means he's immovable, what's the word for? There isn't a word undisturbable. Imperturbable. Imperturbable. You cannot rock him. He's steady. He's sure. He's resting in equanimity. With mind looking at mind, I feel good. So how do you look at your mind? What do you look at your mind with? Is with the mind, isn't it? So that's what you're looking at when you're cleaning your mind. You're doing that with the mind awareness of mind, isn't it? There's no other thing. It's not, I'll just get one of these and I'll look at my mind with turn the microscope the other way around or the telescope the other way. You don't have things like that. It's the mind that's looking at the mind. And with no hope or fear, I feel good. Now, that might seem strange to us because you often hear people say, oh, we must have hope. Without hope, there's nothing. We hear this a lot. If you have hope, you will also have fear. This is the opposite, isn't it? Why do you need hope? Because of something you're afraid of. You don't want that to happen, so you hope that this will happen. Hope and fear. He's gone beyond hope and fear. And he feels good. Because he can see that it's the opposite. It's like the other side of the coin. He's not miserable. He feels good. Said it lots of times. I feel great. I feel really good about all this. Because he's not subject to that hope and fear. In the expanse of luminosity, the luminous nature of mind, free of fixation on this or that, I feel good. Now this is very hard for us to understand because he's talking about the enlightened state of mind, and we can only guess at how that must feel. But it's good to have it explained even in words that can't explain it, to describe the indescribable, but at least you have maybe some inkling of where to head. Because usually, what are our minds occupied with? This and that and a million different things that are doing us nothing, doing us no good at all. In this expanse of luminosity, free of fixation on this thing or that thing, I feel good. In the space of non-conceptual wisdom, I feel good. So there's no concepts about this. This is pure wisdom, the wisdom and compassion and enlightened mind, that it doesn't fixate on this concept or that concept or trying to make a kind of formulaic way of understanding something that cannot be understood but can only be experienced. Maybe it can be understood in the experience, but not by concepts. In the space of non-conceptual wisdom, I feel good. In the primordial state of spontaneity, I feel good. So this state is primordial. We have it. It's what our true nature is. And it's getting to that state, connecting to that state that we have. It's not out there and we have to go up the mountain to get it and then bring it down and then we become enlightened. We have it. It's primordial and it's spontaneous. It's not artificial. In the primordial state of spontaneity, it's become effortless. I feel good. With the 6 consciousnesses in their own place, I feel good. So I think the 6 consciousnesses refers to the sense organs of the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the mind, the body, mind, in their own place. So they are all in their own place, but they're not dictating his life. They're in their place. They're where they should be. In other words, if one was out of place, let's say, or too much in evidence, let's say the tongue, then you'd be maybe focusing on food or something like that, or too visually worried about appearances or something like that. So everything's there, you've still got all these senses, but they're all in where they should be. That's I don't know if that is true, but that's what I understand from that. You will be studying all of this by yourself, and you might come to different or more ways of understanding. And then with the clarity of the 5 gates consciousnesses, I feel good. So what I understand from that is the gates are what those organs do. So seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, what you do with those organs. So those are the gates of the consciousness. And so with the clarity of those, I feel good. Everything is in place. Everything is as it should be. I can use these things, but I'm not. They're not out of whack. Everything is in tune. And with the cutting of minds coming and going, I feel good. Usually, our mind comes and goes all the time, doesn't it? It goes here, it goes there, it wanders over there, it comes back here, it goes up to Timbuktu, it comes back to the marketplace, then it goes, it goes everywhere. And we're constantly distracted by it. So with cutting minds coming and going, he's there, he is fully present in the present, here and now. He feels good. From that point, anything is possible. He has all the powers, and we know that Milarepa has supernatural powers. But you only can contact those powers if you're really with it, And he finishes with, I have so many ways of feeling good. This is a yogi's happy song. I'm really happy in all this, And I don't aspire for any other kind of happiness. I've got everything I need here with me now. I don't aspire to any other kind of happiness. In death, I feel good, for I've done no negative deeds. So he knows that when the time comes for him to die, he's cool with that, he's fine. There's no regrets. And he looks beyond death. He knows what's happening beyond death. He's not only this life, but any other life. So he's very at ease with that, very at ease. And in life, I feel good, for virtuous activity flourishes. There's nothing to feel bad about. Everything he does is virtuous, and it flourishes. It bears fruit. So what's not to be happy about? benefactors give me food and clothes. So sometimes benefactors will come and or people who have, he's come to ask his advice, and then they've given him offerings, and they may give him some food or clothes. But he just sees this is the kindness of the three jewels and the Guru, the kindness of the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. Doesn't matter which humans deliver it. It is through the kindness of the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, his Guru, that these things happen. It is the karmic result of, you could say, of these things happening. So this is how he sees it, because that's how it is. To practice for the sake of yogic bliss feels good. So he has this yogic bliss that arises, and it is blissful, and that feels good. So everything that he does is good, therefore he feels good. And then he adds just a little codicil at the end. Oh, by the way, Rinchen, are you well? Because he's saying all this in answer to Rinchen asking after how he is, and he's given him all this amazing, just incredible song of liberation. And by the way, and did you get what you went for? You went to be cured of your illness and see this Indian guru, and so how did it go? So when Milarepa had sung all this, Rinchen replies, and he says, "Yes, I'm also well, and I got what I went for. Now please accept me and continue to give me instructions." This must be music to Milarepa's ears, because he was a little bit worried that maybe Rinchen would get his head turned in some way, but no, he's come back. He's taken him out of his. He's come back into the cave, and the first thing he wants is his instructions. So then the Jetsun again gave Rinchen instructions and had him meditate in the silk cave. There he perfected his experience and realization. And this is the cycle of meeting his heart son, Rinchen, at the silk cave. So I think we should definitely follow Milarepa's instruction. The instruction was to Rinchen at that point, but I think we can widen it and do the same thing and do a little bit of meditation after all these words, these wonderful words of Milarepa's. So let's just sit with them. And so if you want to get yourself in a good posture, so just relax body and mind, straightening up your posture. So the top of your head reaching up to the sky, rooting into the earth with your lower part of your body. Tuck the chin in a little bit. So now your posture is relaxed, at ease, and just allow the mind to settle. Mind and breath. Mind riding on the breath. Everything settles. Completely natural. You don't need to do anything. It's more a question of being here and now and allowing these words of wisdom of Milarepa to sink in and you can reflect on them or just kind of absorb them. The core of what he said, the meaning of what he said. Resting with those words in your heart and mind. So obviously when you're at home you need to meditate longer than that. But we're running out of time, so I just wanted to at least have some taste of a meditation at the end. But something occurred to me. Well, because we don't know how long Milarepa was in the cave or how long it took for Rinchen to go to India, we don't have that amount of time written down, but we can assume that it's not easy. It's not like you just get on a plane to India, It takes at least months, and the way is fraught with danger, or was fraught with danger. If you hear about people traveling in those days, there were often bandits on the road. You were going through all sorts of different kinds of territories. I would imagine it would be a matter of months there, and a matter of months back, and then however long it took him to find this teacher, Rinchen find the teacher, Chandra, and to then do all the practice to the point where his leprosy or whatever the disease was cured. Again, that's going to be, I would say, at least 6 months, if not years. So I would say the minimum would be a year that he was away. And possibly a lot longer, maybe 5 years, maybe more. However long it was, when he came back, Milarepa was still in the cave. And we need to think about this, because how could he exist in that cave, still sealed in? And then he comes and he gets him out and he says, "And how are you?" And he said, "I feel really good." And he goes on to explain how he feels good, because he has been meditating that time. He has been in practice that time. He has been in a place we cannot even begin to think how it must be. And he's healthy, So I'm just mentioning that. Because somebody like that, for us it's miraculous. It is completely miraculous. How could somebody exist like that? They would be dead. A normal person would be dead in months before that, years before that, whatever. But he's not, and he's fine. He goes on to explain why and how and everything like that. So this is not ordinary. This is extraordinary. To us, we can only say it's miraculous. But that's the level of his practice. Just saying. So when you're studying this, because we've gone through it a little bit, and I've said my 2 pennyworth, whatever that's worth, but you need to look at every line yourself and really think, well, how could that be, And how do you get to be like that? So don't just take it, oh, Milarepa said it, therefore it's true, and how? Ask yourself that, and how it might be. Okay, so we have the basically 2 songs, but I would recommend studying them in 3 sections, and maybe doing 1 section per week or something, and then in a month we'll come back and do the next bit. So yeah, that's what I would recommend, but that's really just for ease of not having too much on your plate at any one time. It is a lot on your plate because of the depth of profundity and of something that's not comprehensible. So in conjunction with reflecting on it, we need to practice to have even the smallest inkling. And that's the truth of the matter. So without that, it's just going to be like a pipe dream. Okay, so, and then if you have any questions that you can't resolve, I might not be able to resolve them either, but you're welcome to come back and ask me. But first ask yourself, and you don't let it go. You go into really think about things. Use your best intelligence and your experience. Okay, so let's say the dedication prayer. we'll say it in the English. Oh, by this merit may I obtain omniscience, defeat the enemy wrongdoing, and so free all beings from the ocean of samsara, with its stormy waves of birth, aging, sickness, and death. Okay, so go well, and see you next time.